Hey, this is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in today on a great viewer question, and that is, am I addicted to emotional pain? A sort of masochistic streak, if you will. This question was presented to me by someone who is in a relationship with someone who he feels is definitely a female psychopath, and he feels essentially as a victim now in relationship to this person. A victim meaning that he has been used, and he doesn't really want to go into detail, but that how could he stay and cling to someone who is so hurtful, harmful, destructive, clearly, not essential for his evolution, because really if you're being degraded in an emotional pain sort of way, it really does hinder and stunt you. It keeps you sort of like marching in place, if you will. You feel that you're kind of at least going through some motions that your body is used to through kind of going forward, but you're really not going forward. So there's this physiological trickery and deception that is part of this pattern when you're in a relationship with someone who is psychopathic, someone who overly stimulates, hyper arousal, degrading, has no sexual boundaries. So when you've experienced this along with, a conglomerate of other situations, you could very well be in a relationship with someone who is not just the typical person who has a strong passion, but actually someone who is getting you addicted, especially to emotional pain. And as you can understand, if you're addicted to pain, you're going to go counterintuitively to your own natural physiology and really your healthy evolution. So I think this is a great viewer question. And before we get started, I just want to give a super huge shout out to those of you who have recently made a donation to the channel. Really, it is an honor and a privilege, and thank you for your support. And it's to be in this niche is to help clarify and provide truth and connection with what you're feeling rather than feeling in a cognitive fog. Fog is fear, obligation, and guilt. Especially fear can present in so many different ways. Fear of success, fear of failure, fear of being loved, fear of deserving, and then how this then manifests. It's really quite fascinating to someone like me who looks at this on a daily basis to help people sort things out and make clear decisions that are obviously in the right. Because when we look at relationships, it's not always based on fact. There's a lot of subjective feeling that comes into the matter, into your decision making. And you can look at certain facts, but yet certain emotions will usually win over. And especially when these are troublesome, worrisome, or concerning to you, particularly that of, being toyed with. When you think it's in the name of love, this can be very, very, confusing. Cognitive dissonance can be a result where you know something to be not good for you, but you're doing it anyway. And then when this gets even more and more clear on down the path, you cannot stop. There's a feeling of addiction, being out of control. And, this is a very terrifying situation. So I think that's a great viewer question. But once again, I just want to give a special acknowledgement to those people who have recently donated to the channel. Thank you so much. And I appreciate your comments and your questions as well. If you have a desire to give back, if this channel has been a positive resource, please do feel free to donate at the PayPal Donate Now button here at the About page here at Peace and Harmony. I just have to throw that in there because people ask me about how they can ask questions or give back to the channel. So you can definitely do that. And in your notes, ask a question if you have a specific topic. So thank you so much. And really, when we talk about emotional pain, there's a very distinct, pleasure that can be allocated to this plane. pain. For example, in self-sacrifice, feeling that you're giving it, your life to a greater cause. You might have, for example, working on a degree or a field of study or a project. You might sacrifice sleep. You might sacrifice going out. You might sacrifice a good meal, for coffee and the midnight oil, burning the midnight oil. And this might cause a certain degree of discipline required and then emotional pain. So there's the feeling that eventually the discipline and the feeling of the focus required can be a little bit of an effort. Yeah, but there's usually a payoff that you can look forward to. So there's this checks and balances where things work out, and it's justifiable in essence. But when you become sort of seeking out of that emotional pain, seeking out of those, or what feels like seeking out of that degradation, of the deception, of the same trickery, or more so games where there's a winner and a loser, and you feel that you're kind of winning by losing, it's a very, very sort of fine line that you walk, a tightrope, eggshells, if you will, when you're in a relationship with someone who has, set you up for this physiological desire or connection or way of quote unquote bonding to them. And this is very peculiar because not a lot of people will, of course, encourage this in you. It's not, emotional pain is usually not a desirable circumstance or situation. I mean, this is just, based in your hard wiring as a person. You're the oldest part of the brain stem, has the hard wiring of fight or flight, which means, for example, back in the day, if a saber-toothed tiger was running after you, you'd get pins and needles, you'd get on hyper alert, your heart would begin to race, you might jolt, and then you would take off running, or you would do whatever it was to, throw dirt at it or whatever you're supposed to do back in those days. But the fight or flight was an evolutionary development to protect you. Now, fight or flight also comes on in episodes of stress, which are a pressure, usually from an environmental source. And so we then create this confabulation in the mind, almost as if you've got pressure written on your ceiling, pressure written on the walls. You're in sort of this hyper aroused state. And for a certain degree, there's healthy amount of stress. To get onto a highway so you don't get, creamed by an 18-wheeler. To walk more quickly so you're not late to work. To work quickly in the kitchen so all of your meal comes together on time. There's a healthy amount of stress that the body can tolerate. But emotional pain is really one of those very, very unique kind of unicorn emotions where, once in a while, and if it's related to a fantasy, you feel, wow, I can go through this if I get this, and so there's this, fantasy or illusory element. However, someone who is psychopathic will use this to destroy somebody or especially attack them on certain healthy levels. For example, healthy manliness, healthy machismo, not over about, to make one feel as a man, to feel that they can provide, that they are emotionally stable, rock solid, built tough, the closest, shave a man can get or whatever it is, that manliness that gives you that sort of quintessential man essence, masculine essence, the yang energy, the assertive energy, the more, aggressive versus the more, receptive yin energy, the softer energy, what you might call the yielding to the power or yielding to the force. And when you're in a relationship with someone who is sociopathic, they make you addicted or they confuse really within your own system pleasure and pain. So the two become married in the worst possible way, where you're seeking out, basically, you're aroused or desire your own degradation, or you get patterned into this because of this bigger quality at play. In other words, to be a man, usually there's some other, element that is tied into this self-destruction. In other words, I shouldn't say anything. I shouldn't appear sensitive. I shouldn't say no. I shouldn't, make this, I shouldn't show my vulnerability. I shouldn't put my guard down. This is, there's all sorts of explanations and excuses that can run and play tricks with someone's mind, gaslighting and brainwashing. They can come when you're with people who are sociopathic and they really just don't feel emotions. They like to feel power. And basically that just means control over and control over others, and taking away self-efficacy. Self-efficacy. People who are empowered experience self-efficacy, or a feeling of being personally effective. In other words, they know they don't have to be micromanaged, they don't have to be told. They are effective. They are results-oriented. They know what to do to get the job done. They don't need a motivator. They, from outside, they are internally motivated. So this, internal motivation towards your desires, which really is a lot of people's passion, is they have something that they desire. They are something that they want. There's the pleasure principle. I mean, these are all psychological constructs. When you're in a relationship with someone who has you addicted to self-degradation, it eventually takes you away from really a feeling of reality, which is a shared experience, with others. In other words, this checks out. This is real. And it becomes very scary because other relationships don't mirror the same reality. And so your quote-unquote reality then hinges on this super special person where the SEX is fantastic, off the charts, unbelievable, OMG, whatever, is usually, the experience of being addicted to this hyper-aroused state. No sexual boundaries, no boundaries. Beyond boundaries sounds positive, doesn't it? But think again, no boundaries basically means no structure. And structure equals form. In other words, it's a formless relationship. It can go anywhere. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty. It's formless. It doesn't really have a beginning and an end. You just kind of find yourself there. You just don't, And so to a lot of people, this is like a pleasant surprise, the answer to my prayers. This person must, I must be very desirable. I must be a hunk of monka, or whatever it is, that you're getting propped, an ego prop from this dynamic. But furthermore, sort of then looking forward to this pain. And then if there is no pain, it's not as pleasurable. But what I want you to understand is that the cycle is then perpetuated through a physiology which keeps you stuck. A physiology meaning something which is extremely physical. It's extremely physical. It's how you feel. Especially for men, this expression is, it's an important part of one's personality or one's physical makeup. It's just how someone is built. It's how you're built. You're taught in science, structure equals form. Or, I'm sorry, form equals function, rather. Structure, form equals function. And so, I'm supposed to function this way until you really look at it and you begin to not be able to connect the dots. There's some pieces missing. You can still see a big picture, but your mind is having to fill a lot in. And this can eventually get into a feeling of loss of being in touch with reality. This is, this is beyond real. This is, what movies are made of, songs are written about. This is, the glory days of old. This is what passion relationship, this is what, love must have been like with Cleopatra. they're like an empress to me. I mean, the status, whether you really kind of describe it in the mind, usually of this person who is psychopathic, is they're this superhuman, more human than human status. And there's a lack of morality, but that usually doesn't come into play because, more a moral the better can oftentimes be this boundless, boundaryless relationship experience, especially when it comes to physical expression. A lot of men equate their status with how their relationship is on this physical romantic level, and if they're not getting that, then they downgrade themselves. They tend to take an ego blow, whether it's true or not, or I'm sorry, real or not. It becomes the truth. It becomes how they really feel. It becomes how they perceive things. And this is a very easy crevice to get your foot stuck in and get stuck. And even though you know better, a lot of people have a lot of difficulty sort of getting the motivation, the leverage back over themselves. In other words, to get a position where their own desire and pain is above and beyond the emotional pain that they become addicted to, becomes a very difficult lever to push. They lose power over themselves. They lose control over themselves. They lose control or lack of leverage, meaning you can't shake it. It becomes very pronounced, very loud, ongoing, high, just a high idol, if you will. These are the earmarkings and the makings of post-traumatic stress syndrome, where that it becomes chronic 24/7. Soldiers who have, been in areas of battle, who are around this fear 24/7, it's always turned on. Their fear and hyperarousal is always turned on. It is not shut off, because to do so would, be to not preserve your life, not preserve your position, not preserve your family. So there's a lot of leverage to staying in that hyperarousal state. And then when they come off of duty and are coming back into society, it just doesn't turn off. It's just on all the time. And they're like, everything I'm interpreting as a threat, or, everything is interpreted according to this hyper-aroused state. And likewise, it's my viewpoint, there's a real strong parallel. In fact, this is a really good analogy. In other words, everything then seems to trigger the arousal of the relationship. Everything seems to be a provoker of a reason to get back together with them, or send them a text, or send them a picture, or make the next date, or get something else ready for when you get together to keep it going. Everything else seems to trigger you in that direction. And whether your interpretation of this is correct or not, it is interpreted as so. So there's this addiction sets in. Your identity sets in. I am with this person, and then, I am degraded, and then it becomes fearful when you find that this person isn't there. Then you're constantly thinking about them. How do you break this cycle? How do you break this tension, especially when it's sort of set up and within this person? And you need to understand a couple terms, and that which is having self-efficacy, which means being able to be personally effective or affect yourself on something, and then you get a result. You get a result in the desirable direction. And this suffers when you're in a relationship with someone who, in my viewpoint, who is psychopathic. In other words, your efficacy becomes intimately intertwined with this person's perception of you. It becomes overwhelming as such. Now, it might not have anything to do with reality, but it feels like your truth. And it's very difficult to pull away, not only because you're physiologically needing this, wanting this, there's a physical craving, but then the emotional component is tied in, the psychological, and also the fact of fear, and that, no one else is really going to get this. No one else can provide this. No one else can supply this for me. So I'm SOL. So there's a lot of reasons why the addiction can be very, very deep, destructive, disturbing, negative, makes you question a lot of things, causes you to put a lot on the line, your job, your finances, your reputation, because of this lack of self-leverage and feeling of, being able to explain that this is not a positive, yet there's so much desire, i.e. addiction, which seems positive, to go back and forth on the fence from. And then, of course, there's the idiosyncratic, the word salad that they do. Things that are oftentimes, tinged with humor, where you're, where people are then sort of adhered and glued to their sense of humor or their sense of boundary violation, or what I'll say, reducing somebody to a sexual objectification. When you are objectified, for a lot of men, especially who are lonely or haven't been in a relationship or have not, had a lot of romantic encounters that they felt were fulfilling, this seems like this is the answer to my prayers. This is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been missing. So there's this immediate void. And so they go after it like, someone's starving off a crust of bread that they just, or a loaf of bread that they've just found. They're like, oh my God, I love this. I need this. This is one of my basic needs, which has not been satisfied. And it can become very, very insidious and intricate in the way it has its hold on you. And just, it seems it's very difficult to see beyond a cognitive fog, if you will. Fog, once again, fear, obligation, and guilt. But there's a lot, that you can be afraid of. It's just not, oh, I'm afraid. There's a lot of other fears. You need to understand the cause of the fear. So breaking the cycle, breaking the addiction, speaking to yourself as if, you were your own best friend. You got to get out of this. This is not healthy. To be sort of, treated with a masochistic surge or streak, which is not, which is out of character for you. This is not growth. This is not development. This is out of character for you. But yet your identity is trying to make it so. So your I am, especially for men, I feel, I am manly, I am a good lover, I am attractive, I am a sex object, I have sex appeal, I am desirable, I am manly, I am, masculine. In other words, I won't, speak of my fears, I won't bring up my feelings. I shouldn't discuss this with them. It could ruin what we have, or I could appear less than, I could, maybe I'm not as desirable. There's something in there, and there's a reason why you're not being able to get yourself to do what you need and want to do. You're losing self-empowerment. You're losing self-efficacy. You're losing leverage over yourself, power over yourself. Now, everything in the environment has power over you and then is defined and interpreted as go back to them. Everything in your body is telling you physiologically. So oftentimes the key is looking at, in my viewpoint, is the physiology, and realizing you're going to need to get control over your physiology, where your eyes look, where your hands go, where your feet goes, what your body does. It's like getting up out of bed. In the morning, a lot of people, the first thing they're going to do is click snooze. They don't have power over their physiology. This is kind of a parallel. It's very difficult. Oh my God, I just want to sleep another half an hour. It's too cold out. Oh, it's raining. Oh, I don't want to make the coffee. Oh, I don't want to, do this. All these things, and then snooze. You're hitting the snooze, the emotional snooze button. And this is really what kind of gets played, and developed. You're hitting an addiction, an emotional addiction button. You're desiring it. I don't have what it takes. I'm not strong enough to break this. Yes, you are. You're lying to yourself if you feel that you don't have power over this. Yes, you do. You were able to navigate your life before this situation presented itself, and you will be able to again, in fact, even bigger, better, bolder, stronger, faster, more resilient after you break out of it. Because it's like, if I can handle this, I can handle anything. If I can handle being through this, training for a marathon ain't that difficult. This might be one of the most difficult things that you encounter in your life. You need to understand that. And that, masochistic is going to lead to a bunch of, in my viewpoint, your emotions are like a test tube with a bunch of stuff that should not be combined. It's going to basically, not end well for you, for your finances, for your reputation, for your self-esteem, for future relationships, or just being at peace in a comfortable body. So you have to look at that 5-second window where you need to go, nope, I'm getting up. I have an opportunity to break this cycle. I have an opportunity. There was a great TED Talk. Can't think of the presenter right now, but they talk about, are you hitting the snooze button or are you hitting the opportunity button when you wake up? Are you seeing this as an opportunity to get to know and be stronger? Get to know life, yourself, your true values, what's truly there to take care of you in life? Or are you sort of losing it to this person? And you have to be rigorously honest. You have to, and furthermore, what are you waiting for to get you to do what you need to do? Are you waiting for, you to expose them, you to find something, you to, get married? I mean, what are you waiting for? So you have to realize and talk to people. Come to this channel. Discuss things with people and viewers here on the channel who are going through what you're going through. You are not alone. You can talk to people. You can be anonymous. You can have yourself out there, but you do need to talk to people, because if you keep yourself isolated, it's just going to fester, and eventually, you're going to need, some, it's going to take some work. It's going to take some work, but the work is for you. It's not work for somebody else. It's work for you. You're the beneficiary. You're the benefiter of the work that you do by saying, no more, I'm putting your foot down, and not second guessing yourself, not questioning yourself. So if you need to write down the reasons, shout the reasons out loud, get a counselor, get a life coach, get a therapist, get a psychologist, get psychiatry, whatever it is, get something going for yourself so that you can begin to take a peek outside of this involvement and see if you can get some checks and balances. If you're and don't feel weak, meek, vulnerable, less than, undesirable for doing this. Obviously, emotional pain will become a real barrier to you and, sort of meeting fulfillment and happiness in life. Pain and happiness are, oftentimes very different situations. Happiness and empowerment will come with self-efficacy, where you're feeling in control and effective, where you've got that sort of in the fiber of your being. And so it's in the fiber of your being where that emotional ruin is really being targeted. And the sad thing is that these people who are psychopathic, they know what they're doing. They know when people are hyper aroused. They know when they are triggering people. They know when they're getting, everybody's attention. This is what they live for. This is their personality. They are different. They're a horse of a different color. So, this is just, so if you're experiencing this and you've been putting something off, yet you need to put something on the calendar and make yourself do it. Whether you get up a half an hour earlier to change your life and have a half an hour to research, making some choices, decisions, connecting with people, isn't it worth it to change your life? Stop questioning, stop doubting yourself, and ask yourself the right questions. If I wasn't being so deceived, I would really admit to myself that. And answer those questions for yourself and be rigorously honest. Even if you haven't heard the answer from yourself, allow yourself to listen and go with your gut instinct. It might be little by little. You might want to just make it all at once, but continuing to ask these questions and do some of the solutions that we presented here will help you to know the power and the victory of your decision. And time will tell, and time will share with you that you did the right thing. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out.